So thank you, Simon. Thank you, Pedro. So you have seen that with the Translation Hub, we have some very useful tools that are now in the working mode to help projects to move further. So the question we should ask ourselves, do we have enough pressure on the system to let it go now? Shall we stop here or shall we do something different? So Darwin can ask, okay, can I go now? Is it time? So can we relieve the pressure on the system? And I think no, not yet, because there is still a need for speed. We need to accelerate again. I think with this system, now we have the useful tool to move forward, but what is missing is some acceleration, something that will move faster the project to market, something that will constantly put pressure on the system. That's why we thought that we should add another tool to these already existing ones. And so far we named them Catapultor. Why? Because that gives you the sense of accelerating a project and where you have to go. And so this project, Catapultor, is under evaluation at the moment. We are building it, and it has been submitted through the project ENATRANS to the European Commission, and we are working on it. So it's not yet either finalized or implemented, but the concept is very simple. We went around in this world and saw what's happening, how people are working with projects, how they help others to make good projects. We have seen some very good examples in some countries, especially around the IT area, where they have put in a mode which is different. I will talk about it a bit later, and that is really helping projects. And this mode, believe it or not, almost does not exist outside very few local small examples for healthcare startup. So here, describing what we want to do, we ask projects from everywhere to come, and those projects could be selected by the tab. It has been shown efficient, the tab to select and to orient a project. And then those projects for a few years will be in a sort of an incubator, but not the usual incubator that you see, an incubator where the project will be mentored by entrepreneurs that have done the job already, and successful entrepreneurs that will go with 1 or 2 projects maximum and will help them for 2 years to be ready to get money, to be ready to go to development, to be ready to jump and to go fast. I think if I look at what we have done in our company, what we propose to do in 2 years now, it took me like 6 years to do it with a full team. So I think if we can accelerate this, and if we can work with a large number of projects, then we should be able to provide some good insight and some good new product. So we take projects, we mature them, we accelerate them for 2 years with help of entrepreneurs within a community of VCs plus some other useful bodies. And then after 2 years, when the product is ready to get money, the VC can invest in the company, and maybe EU could also invest in this company, and you have an up and running project. So it is important to have a global selection, and that's where the tab could play an important role, because it has so far a global role, and then to have a local action. So the idea here is not to have one Catapultor for Europe, but to have one Catapultor idea, one mode of action, and some local Catapultors in every big cities in Europe. And with that, we really think that we can play a major role and also attract projects from outside Europe to come. It has been proven efficient. For example, in Massachusetts, Boston, they have this match challenge activity, and with very few money, in few years, they have been able to attract projects from all over the world to create a large number of jobs and companies and revenues. So I think we should try to do the same, but in better. So I think the Catapultor could be a very useful tool for us and for Europe. And we could have a clear goal that we build 100 healthcare startups in 5 years. And I think that's an achievable goal. And when I say 100 startups, it's not 100 creation. That's 100 startups with a good chance of success, with finance, with good people, with good project, and potentially with excellent product for patients. So I think that should be the next goal of ETPN, to put on track this catapultor. So we will give you more insight on that as soon as we have finalized our thought, and you will hear from us. So now I will leave the floor open for question. We have, I think, half an hour or so to discuss that, just before Eckhart is making his presentation. So please feel free to ask any question.
Didier Basile, Sanofi, thank you for the presentation. I have a question for the EU NCL. You mentioned that it's preclinical characterization, non-GLP preclinical characterization. So my question is there a limitation to move to GLP or GMP characterization?
Yes, it's working. Thank you for the question. There are different reasons why not to move to GLP or GMP level characterization. First is a recommendation from the European Commission to not, let's say, set up a competitor to the existing CROs with the, let's say, public money. That's the first one. And the other one is the level of quality required to go through the GMP or GLP characterization lab, which is really a huge work in terms of defining the good rules. The GLP is really demanding in terms of, how would say that, documentations and standardization. So this is not ready yet, and we may, let's say, come to that afterwards, especially if we're, let's say, working more closely to the pilot lines where we'll have to maybe transfer our characterization assays to the GMP level for the GMP production pilot lines, for example. But for the time being, we're really working at the non-GLP level globally.
Just one comment on that also, because I think most of the products that are coming at this stage, they are not yet finalized product, the exact same form that will be into patient. So to have a full GLP characterization for those material from a cost opportunity may not be perfect.
I have a question to Pedro. Pedro, when you presenting your data and actually the first year results, so to say, do you have any data or to compare this with other activities or incubators in Europe at larger institutions? Because actually you're investing something like 430 hours of high-speed people, so to say. This is a lot of money. Mm-hmm. Think about it, you would pay 100 euro per hour.
Well, yeah,
or even more.
No. Thank you for the question.
Is that or less? Okay, maybe. No, actually, in terms of cost and relation for outcome, is there data to compare this to other activities in Europe?
No, actually not. Well, first of all, it's difficult for us to benchmark against incubators, for example. I think it's different instruments, really. We are providing advice to projects, so we are also creating a kind of support service that is open to everybody. You know, it's open to any kind of project, and the time that we have spent, I think it's actually been really effective so far, because we are providing feedback to all projects that are being submitted, and if you divide the number of hours for projects, you really come down to a very low number. And then the fees are, well, quite below the standard that probably these experts would be paid if they were doing their consulting roles in to the private sector, for example, because we are bound by national funding rules, so there is limits that we cannot go over. So I would say it would be interesting if there would be other instruments as the Translation Advisory Board that we could compare with, but we could not compare our service with incubators or other support instruments, really.
If I may add a statement, I've been working in the management team of a company incubator at Philips. Compared to that, this is really cheap.
It's not because of that you pay the money, but basically the cost you create for those is there.
Yeah, no, I understand. The point is, the comparison with an incubator, as I see it, in an incubator, you really basically give, let's say, structure to organizations. You have kind of a teaching session. What we are doing here with the TAB, or what we are trying to do, is to give guidance out of industrial experience. That is a different story and not necessarily comparable to what typical incubators are doing.
Yeah, yes, and let me just add, thank you for the compliment, Ecker, that there's also different sorts of incubators, and probably some incubators are really providing some interesting and closer support services to their startups. And I mean, in Portugal, for example, they are just offering space, and they are not providing any advice, you know. It really depends on the countries. And I think that maybe the support that is provided by incubators in different regions might be a reason why we are getting projects from some regions more than others, for example, okay? Or other support structures, not only incubators, other consulting networks that exist out there. So yeah, I think it's a very difficult benchmark to do at this point.
Yeah, Mike Eaton. I can comment a little bit on the comparability issue because there is an organisation within the UK, Innovate UK, which does the similar sort of role, and I think it works very similarly and its costs are very similarly. So I can add on that. Could I take an issue with your presentation, Pedro? You talk about many projects are at an early stage of development, and one of the things I'm very keen on is we use the word development very precisely, and what you're actually saying is a very early stage of research, or research, not in development. You know, there's a big difference between research and development, and I'm guilty of it as well. We use the word development too loosely, really. Development is development, research is research. Could I move on to the other point? You talked about a lot of projects in cancer, and I think that's not necessarily a good thing. The most promising projects that I see are generally outside the most popular areas. So, you know, running into a headlong competition with thousands of other players is not necessarily a good thing. Mm-hmm. And you can see that in terms of the drug approvals as well, because orphan drugs are a disproportionately large part of the approved drugs these days. So going for cancer is not necessarily a clever option, really.
Yeah. This was just figures anyway. Right?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a general comment. What Mike just made, which is very important, is when you develop a new product, you're going to compete within a field with other people. So going where everyone is sometimes is not a good idea, unless you have something really disruptive. But you can be sure that you will always find more space, more applicability, more benefit if you go where no one is going. Maybe harder for some reason, or easier, depending, but don't fight in red oceans. Try to find your blue ocean to develop new ideas. That's where you have a good chance to win and to make a huge difference.
Well, as you have heard yesterday, you know, I think at ETPN and in France as well, I think we always had the same weakness. That means we do not sell our services at the right price. We are always too low. So, because if you consider the service offered either by UNCL or by TAB, you know, if this would be, let's say, a private service, it would be, let's say, maybe 1,000 times more expensive. But anyway, it's not our goal to sell it at the right price. Our goal is try to support the development of industrial nanomedicine, I would say, because it's part of the statement of ETPN, the main statement of ETPN. And so I think this, by just listening to the applicants, either at EUNCL or at TAB, you know, by listening to the applicants and what they gain out of their consultations in both initiatives, I think we have already reached our goal. In and out, okay. So we have already reached our goal, and of course we have to expand it at a wider scale. And then my question to Pedro, how do you identify or screen, let's say, for the hidden gold nuggets all over, let's say, Europe or maybe outside Europe, to offer them, let's say, the tab services?
Sorry, Patrick, I couldn't understand.
How do you identify, let's say, the future clients
okay.
of tab?
Yeah. Actually, we have been very active in marketing the tab. So there is a lot of desk research being done by the management unit. We are also participating in events and having, let's say, mass mailing campaigns. I'm sure that most of the people sitting in this room has received plenty of emails from the tab so far in different rounds that we have promoted the tab. So it's really about being able to reach the right targets. So basically the process is we start with desk research, then we identify the targets, we contact them through email, we contact them over the phone sometimes, and the next, probably, still we are not happy with the return that we are having from the marketing efforts. So I think we should probably think of doing more directed marketing actions to different target groups and on a regional basis. So probably coming to some important hubs in nanomedicine or innovative health technologies, and organizing events with local organizations that could serve as multipliers. And I think by this we will have the chance to identify more projects, to screen more projects, and then bringing much more quality projects to the tab as well. I don't know if I answered your question.
Just want to add one comment on the tab, just to prevent to send the wrong message. When we say that we have seen a number of early stage projects, that's not a bad thing. That's even a good thing, because spending 2 hours with those projects, trying to see what's the next experiment to do to validate the concept, what are the key questions to answer, is very valuable. And we can do much more with those projects in 2 hours that you can do with a project which is already into clinical development in 2 hours. So I think don't feel shy, send your project, whatever is the stage of development of research.
And so, sorry, also if I may add, building on the question by Patrick, I also like to invite any people here representing organizations that feel that the tab could be an interesting instrument to be promoted locally, to contact me, and we can discuss how we could organize things together as well to help the community locally in more regional-driven initiatives. So I think this is an important message to press.
Laurent, may I? I think Pedro and I are really, let's say, too excited to speak about one very key success we are gaining in between the UNCL and the tab is that we are cross-sharing applicants, which is very good, and it is an additional level of fostering the development of nanotechnology toward patients. Then, since we're sharing the applicants, depending on the maturity, we are, for the timing, we're really early. We have two applications, 2 sponsors that are benefiting from both UNCL and the tab. One is an NCME, the other one is a university lab. So we're really cross-linking between the different facilities under the TPN umbrella, but there is a really cross-collaboration between that, which is the key message.
Thank you. Very important, and also without breaking confidentiality issues, of course, right? So we are just sharing non-confidential information.
I think that it's quite hard to, it's been not going for that long, these projects, and so for the period of how long it's been going, you'd expect starting to get some data, but getting actual real facts from that data, I would guess it's still a little early. But I would also emphasize that it's not just numbers that matter, it's the quality of what comes out at the end. Because I think Laurent said very well himself, I want 100 healthcare startups in 5 years, but I don't want 100 rubbish ones. I want 100 really good ones. So I think what's important is maybe as it develops is try and get an idea of the quality of the projects that come out of your work. And I think it's too early to know that yet.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I might add, we are actually the watchdogs for the quality, believe me. And we may be at times more strict than we should.
Yeah, I think...
No, he's very nice, don't believe him. Eckhart is very nice.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're very sensitive on the tab to need to give the right sort of feedback, and it is early days. And my experience elsewhere is being, every cycle you do this, you find people get better and better and they learn, so it's a very educational process. So I expect after, if you could run this for probably about 3 or 4 years in my experience, initially people are very naive and present their things rather badly, but the next time they do it better and the next time. So it's a question of evolution in action, the Darwinian principle really, yeah.
Another question in the room? Patrick?
Okay. Can I make a just survey? How many of the participants today are in daily contact with startups or SMEs in nanomedicine? Please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So, Pedro and Simon, these people will give you the name of your future clients. So during the coffee break, please provide the contacts of a person in these SMEs to these two guys. Well, you will win. It's a win-win action, because first you will offer to your close collaborators in these SMEs, let's say, a high-quality service they can never find anywhere else in the world, and in the same time, you will help these people improve their expertise and so on. So please do meet this guy at the coffee break. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So, Eckhart, are you ready?